The silence inside the grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was not peaceful. It was suffocating. 40 of the world's most distinguished linguists sat frozen in their velvet chairs, sweat beading on their foreheads. At the head of the table, Sheikh Zaid al-Hassan stared at them with eyes like burning coal. His patience snapped. He had asked one simple question in a dialect thought to be dead for 3 centuries. No one moved. No one spoke. The billion-dollar contract and the fate of an entire region hung by a thread. Then the silence shattered, not by a professor, but by the soft, trembling voice of a waitress holding a silver tray of water. "It's not a question, Your Highness," she whispered. "It's a warning." The air conditioning in the Pierre Hotel's private conference suite was set to a crisp 68 degrees, yet Professor Cedric Halloway was sweating through his bespoke Italian suit. He adjusted his silk tie, glancing nervously at the man sitting across the mahogany expanse. Sheikh Zaid al-Hassan did not look like a man who was easily impressed. The billionaire industrialist and royal envoy played with a gold fountain pen, spinning it effortlessly between his fingers. Behind him stood 2 silent bodyguards, their expressions hidden behind dark sunglasses, despite the dim, ambient lighting of the room. To Zaid's right sat his advisor, a sharp-eyed man named Tariq, who held a tablet containing the profiles of everyone in the room. 40 experts, Zaid said, his voice low, vibrating with a timbre that commanded immediate submission. He spoke perfect English, though his accent carried the coarse, rhythmic weight of the desert. The finest minds from Oxford, Harvard, and the Sorbonne. And yet, for the last hour, I have heard nothing but textbook Arabic and clumsy formal greetings. Halloway cleared his throat. He was the department head of Middle Eastern Studies at a prestigious Ivy League university. He was not used to being spoken to like an underperforming student. Your Highness, with all due respect, the dialect you are referencing, it is archaic. It is a Bedouin derivative found only in pre-Islamic poetry from the deep Najd region. To use it in modern contract law is unconventional. Unconventional? Zaid stopped spinning the pen. He slammed it down on the table. The sound cracked like a whip. "I am not hiring a translator to order me falafel, Professor. I am negotiating mining rights with the elders of the Wadi al-Jinn. They do not speak modern standard Arabic. They speak the language of blood and sand. If you cannot understand the nuance of their threats, you will get my negotiation team killed." A heavy silence descended. In the shadows of the room, Eliana Foster adjusted the heavy tray on her shoulder. Her uniform, a stiff black waistcoat and a knee-length skirt, felt like a cage. She had been standing in the corner for 45 minutes, instructed by the maître d' not to move, not to breathe, and certainly not to exist unless someone's water glass was empty. She watched the sheikh with a mixture of fear and fascination. He was terrifying, yes, broad-shouldered, with a jawline that looked carved from granite. But he was also right. Eliana shifted her weight, her feet aching in the cheap black pumps she had bought at a thrift store. She knew exactly what the sheikh had said 5 minutes ago. He hadn't just asked a question about land borders. He had quoted a line from the Mu'allaqat, specifically referencing a tribal law about water rights during a drought. They don't know, she thought, scanning the faces of the 40 men and women at the table. They are looking for literal translations, but he's speaking in metaphors. Eliana bit her lip. She shouldn't care. She was a waitress. She was nobody. 3 years ago, she had been a doctoral candidate in comparative linguistics, a rising star with a scholarship to Cambridge. Then her father got sick. The medical bills piled up like snowdrifts. The scholarship money went to chemotherapy. Then the funeral costs. Then the debt collectors. Now, Eliana Foster, the girl who could speak 6 languages fluently, was pouring sparkling water for men who made more in an hour than she would make in a lifetime. "Let us try one more time," Zaid said, standing up. He walked slowly around the table, his steps muffled by the thick Persian carpet. "I will speak a phrase. The first person to tell me its true meaning gets the contract. $5 million for a 6-month retainer." The number hung in the air. 5 million. Professor Holloway sat up straighter. "We are ready, Your Highness." Zaid stopped directly behind Holloway's chair. He didn't look at the professor. He looked at the wall, his eyes distant. "إذا حبت الريح السموم فإن الأسود لا تأكل الجفا." The room went deadly quiet. Holloway blinked. He pulled a notebook toward him, scribbling furiously. "If the poisonous wind blows," he muttered, translating literally, "then the lions do not eat." The carrion. He looked up, a confident smile returning to his face. "It is a proverb, Your Highness. It translates to, 'When the hot wind blows, the lions do not eat dead meat.' It means that in difficult times, powerful men do not lower their standards." A few other experts nodded in agreement. It made sense. It was a statement of pride. Zaid looked down at Holloway. The look on his face was not one of approval. It was one of absolute disgust. "Get out," Zaid said softly. Holloway froze. "Excuse me?" "I said, get out!" Zaid's voice rose, thundering through the hall. "All of you, out! You are not linguists. You are tourists. You translate words, not souls." He gestured to the door. "Tariq, clear the room. Cancel the meetings for tomorrow. If this is the best the West has to offer, I will conduct the negotiations myself, even if I have to slit my own throat to do it." The scraping of chairs was deafening as 40 humiliated experts gathered their briefcases, scrambling to escape the billionaire's wrath. Holloway turned red, his ego bruised, but he didn't dare argue. Eliana watched them go. She knew she should move. She should retreat to the kitchen before the storm turned on the staff. But the phrase the sheikh had used, it was triggering a memory she couldn't suppress. It wasn't about pride. It was a specific, tactical warning used by the nomadic tribes during the great droughts of the 1920s. Zaid stood alone at the head of the table now, rubbing his temples. He looked exhausted. The anger had drained away, leaving a desperate man carrying the weight of a kingdom. Eliana stepped forward to clear a glass. She meant to be silent. She meant to be invisible. But the words slipped out before she could stop them. "It means you're being hunted," she whispered. Zaid froze. His hand paused midway to his face. He turned slowly, his dark eyes locking onto the waitress standing 5 feet away. "What did you say?" Eliana's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She gripped the silver tray so hard her knuckles turned white. She had spoken. She had actually spoken. The golden rule of high-end service was broken. The help is seen, never heard. I apologize, sir," Eliana stammered, lowering her eyes. "I was just clearing the table." "Look at me," Zaid commanded. It wasn't a shout, but it carried an authority that made it impossible to disobey. Eliana lifted her chin. She looked into his eyes and saw a storm swirling within them. He wasn't looking at her uniform anymore. He was looking at her. "Repeat what you said," Zaid said, taking a step toward her. "About the phrase." Eliana took a breath. The experts were gone. The room was empty except for the sheikh, his advisor Tariq, and 2 bodyguards by the door. She had nothing to lose. She was probably going to get fired anyway. "Professor Holloway was wrong," she said, her voice gaining a fraction more strength. He translated the words literally. "Samum is the hot wind, yes, and Usud are lions. but in the dialect of the Wadi al-Jinn, specifically the southern dialect used by the elders, the lion doesn't refer to the animal. Zaid's eyes narrowed. Go on. The lion is the term they use for the sun when it is at its zenith, Eliana explained, her mind racing back to the dusty texts she used to read in her father's study. And carrion isn't dead meat. In that specific context, it refers to easy victories, or traps set by lesser men. She paused, seeing Zaid's expression shift from anger to intense curiosity. The phrase isn't about pride, Eliana concluded. It's a military warning. When the heat is highest, the sun does not touch the trap. It means they are telling you that they know you are desperate. They know you are coming during the heat, the pressure of your deadline. And they will not take the bait of your initial offer. They are waiting for you to exhaust yourself so they can attack when you are weak. For 10 seconds the room was silent. Tariq, the advisor, looked from the girl to the sheikh, his mouth slightly open. Your Highness, is she correct? Zaid didn't answer immediately. He walked closer to Eliana, invading her personal space. He smelled of oud wood and expensive tobacco. He studied her face, as if she were a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Where did you learn this? Zaid asked quietly. That dialect has not been taught in a university for 50 years. I didn't learn it in a university, Eliana said. My father. He was a linguistic anthropologist, Dr. Robert Foster. He spent 15 years living with the tribes of the empty quarter before the borders were closed. Zaid's eyebrows shot up. Robert Foster, the man who wrote The Whispers of the Sands. Yes, Eliana said, a pang of grief hitting her chest. That was him. I have that book on my desk in Dubai, Zaid said. He looked at her uniform, the cheap polyester stained with a drop of water. If you are Robert Foster's daughter, why are you serving water in a hotel in New York? Eliana looked away. He died 3 years ago. The cancer was aggressive. He didn't have insurance. I sold the house, the library, everything to pay the bills. I had to drop out of my program. And now you are a waitress, Zaid stated, not mocking, just stating a fact. It pays the rent, Eliana said defensively. Barely. Zaid turned to Tariq. Give me the contract. Sir? Tariq blinked. The contract, the one we prepared for the translation firm. Tariq scrambled to open his briefcase and pulled out a thick document bound in leather. Zaid took it and tossed it onto the table in front of Eliana. Read page 4, Zaid ordered. The third paragraph. Eliana hesitated. She put her tray down on a side table. Her hands were shaking as she picked up the document. She opened it to page 4. It was written in the intricate script of the Wadi tribe. She scanned the text. It was complex, legal jargon mixed with tribal customs. But as she read, the words rearranged themselves in her mind. It's a trap, she said, frowning. Explain, Zaid demanded. This clause here. She pointed a manicured finger at the paper. It says the tribe agrees to lease the land for 3 moons. But the word used for moon is hilal, which refers to the crescent moon specifically. In their legal custom, a crescent moon cycle is only 3 days, not a month. If you signed this, you lose the rights to the land after 9 days. But you still owe them the full payment for 10 years. That bastard, Zaid whispered under his breath. He wasn't angry at Eliana. He was furious at the deception she had uncovered. The elder is testing me. He thinks I am a westernized fool who forgot the old ways. He looked at Eliana again. The intensity in his eyes was different now. It wasn't just curiosity, it was need. Take off the apron, Zaid said. What? Eliana stepped back. Take off the apron, Zaid repeated. "You are finished working for this hotel." I can't just quit. I need this job. Your manager works for me now." Zaid cut her off. He pulled a checkbook from his inside jacket pocket. He scribbled a number, ripped the page out, and held it out to her. Eliana looked at the check. Her breath hitched. It was made out to cash. The amount was $50,000. "This is for your time today," Zaid said. "Consider it a consultation fee. I need you in Dubai. We leave in 4 hours." "Dubai?" Eliana laughed nervously. "Sir, I can't just go to Dubai. I have a life here. I have a cat. And rent. Tariq will handle the cat, and your rent is no longer a concern." Zaid stepped closer, his voice dropping to a seductive, dangerous register. "Listen to me, Eliana. Those men who walked out of here, they would have led me into a war. You just saved me $100 million by reading one paragraph. I don't need a professor. I need someone who understands the soul of the language. I need you." Eliana looked at the check, then at the man. He was dangerous. Everything about him screamed danger. But for the first time in 3 years, someone was looking at her not as a servant, but as an intellectual equal. "I can't be bought," Eliana said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I'm not buying you," Zaid said. "I'm hiring you, and the rate is double whatever you're thinking." Suddenly, the doors to the conference room burst open. A tall man with slicked-back blonde hair and a predatory smile strode in. It was Marcus Sterling's partner. No, wait, not Sterling. It was Arthur King, the CEO of King Global, the rival corporation bidding for the same mining rights. "Sheikh Zaid," Arthur boomed, ignoring the tension in the room. "I heard your little audition went poorly. 40 experts and not one could answer your riddle? Perhaps it's time you admit that Westerners can't play your games." Arthur's eyes fell on Eliana. He sneered. "And who is this? Ordering room service to comfort yourself?" Zaid's face hardened into a mask of ice. He moved casually, placing his body between Arthur and Eliana. "This," Zaid said, placing a hand on Eliana's shoulder, "is my new lead translator. And she just found the loophole your associates tried to bury in the contract." Arthur's smile faltered. He looked at Eliana, really looked at her, and for a second, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Foster." Arthur squinted. "You look like Robert Foster." "I am his daughter," Eliana said, finding her voice. Arthur's face went pale. He knew Robert Foster. He knew that Foster was the only man the Wadi tribes trusted. If his daughter was working for the Sheikh, King Global was in trouble. "Well," Arthur said, buttoning his jacket, his voice tight, "this changes things. But be warned, Zaid. The desert is a dangerous place for a waitress." Arthur turned and marched out. Zaid turned back to Eliana. "He's right. It is dangerous. Are you brave enough, Eliana?" Eliana looked at the check in her hand, then at the door where the arrogant CEO had just exited. She thought of her empty apartment, the unpaid electric bill, the silenced potential of her life. She reached behind her back and untied her apron. It fell to the floor in a heap of black polyester. "When do we leave?" she asked. The private jet, a Gulfstream GAG 950 IR, cut through the night sky like a silver needle. Inside, the cabin was quieter than a library and colder than a crypt. Eliana sat in a cream-colored leather seat that was likely worth more than her entire college tuition. She stared out the window, but there was nothing to see but the abyss of the Atlantic Ocean below. She had been on the plane for 7 hours. Zaid had not spoken a word to her for 6 of them. He sat across the aisle, surrounded by a fortress of paperwork. He had discarded his suit jacket, and his white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the faintest hint of tan skin. He looked less like a billionaire playboy now, and more like a general plotting a siege. Tariq, his advisor, was asleep in the aft cabin, leaving Eliana alone with the man who had just upended her life. Eliana touched the hem of her new blouse. Before boarding, Zaid had his team deliver a garment bag to the airport. Her waitress uniform was in a trash can at JFK. She was now wearing silk trousers and a cashmere wrap. It felt like a costume. "Stop fidgeting," Zaid said, without looking up from his documents. "It projects insecurity." Eliana froze. "I'm not insecure, I'm processing." "Process faster," Zaid snapped. He finally looked at her, his dark eyes red-rimmed with fatigue. "We land in Dubai in 3 hours. From there, we take a helicopter to the Al Hassan Palace. You will be given a suite in the East Wing. You are not to leave the grounds without my explicit permission. You are not to speak to the press. And you are certainly not to speak to anyone from King Global." "Is that why you hired me?" Eliana asked, her voice steady despite her nerves. "To keep me away from Arthur King? Or do you actually believe I can help?" Zaid closed the file in his lap. He reached for a crystal tumbler of water, took a sip, and studied her. "My family has controlled the mining rights in the Northern Emirates for 6 generations. But the Wadi al-Jinn, the Valley of the Jinn, is autonomous territory. It is ruled by the Al-Murra tribe. They are difficult. They are proud," Eliana corrected. "My father wrote that they value honor above gold. If you went in there with lawyers and contracts, they would see it as an insult." "Exactly," Zaid said. "Arthur King knows this. He has been sending gifts to the tribal elders for months. Bribes, weapons, promises of infrastructure. He doesn't care about the culture. He wants the lithium deposits beneath the sand. If he gets those rights, he will strip mine the valley and poison the water table." Eliana felt a chill. "And you?" "I want the lithium, too," Zaid admitted ruthlessly. "But I will extract it using sustainable methods. I will preserve their heritage sites. But to them, I am just another businessman in a suit. That is why I need you. You speak their dialect. But more importantly, you know their adat, their unwritten laws." He stood up and walked over to her seat. He loomed over her, imposing and intense. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He placed it on her tray table. "Open it." Eliana hesitated, then flipped the lid. Inside lay a necklace, a simple leather cord strung with a jagged piece of blue stone. It looked worthless compared to the luxury surrounding them. "Lapis lazuli," Eliana whispered, "from the Sarawat Mountains. It was found in your father's belongings when he was detained at the border 10 years ago," Zaid said softly. Eliana's head snapped up. "Detained? My father was never detained. He was a researcher." "Your father was a spy, Eliana," Zaid said, dropping the bomb with zero emotion. "Or at least, that is what the government believed. He was expelled from the country. He didn't leave voluntarily." "That's a lie." Eliana stood up, her anger flaring. "My father loved your country. He dedicated his life to documenting its history." "He was documenting its secrets," Zaid countered, not backing down. "Maps of underground aquifers, locations of unmapped ruins, strategic choke points in the desert, information that is very valuable to foreign militaries." Eliana shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "He was an academic. He was a man who knew too much," Zaid said, "and now you are going back to the place that broke him. Wear the stone. The elders knew your father. Some hated him, some respected him, but they all knew him as the scribe. If they see you wearing that, they will know you are his blood. It will either get you killed or it will get us a seat at the table." He turned and walked back to his seat. "Get some sleep, Ms. Foster. You have a war to fight in the morning." The arrival in Dubai was a blur of heat and flashing lights. They bypassed customs entirely, ushered through a private VIP terminal into a waiting fleet of black SUVs. The city rose out of the desert like a glass forest, defying nature with its opulence. But they didn't stop in the city. The convoy drove deep into the private estate of the Al Hassan family, a sprawling compound surrounded by high walls and palm trees. Eliana was shown to her room by a silent maid. The suite was larger than her entire apartment building in Queens. The balcony overlooked the Persian Gulf, the water glittering under the harsh morning sun. She didn't have time to unpack. A knock came at the door. "Enter," Eliana called out. The door opened and a woman swept in. She was stunning, tall with sharp features and hair blacker than ink, pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a business suit that cost more than a car. "So," the woman said, circling Eliana like a shark, "you are the waitress." Eliana straightened her spine. "I am the lead translator, Eliana Foster." "I am Layla Al Hassan," the woman said coldly, "Zaid's sister, and the CFO of Al Hassan Industries." Layla stopped in front of Eliana, looking her up and down with open disdain. "My brother has a habit of collecting stray animals. Usually it is falcons or racehorses. This is the first time he has brought home an American girl with bad shoes." Eliana glanced at her feet. She was still wearing the thrift store pumps. She felt a flush of shame, but she pushed it down. "I'm here to work, Miss Al Hassan, not to join your fashion show." Layla laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "You think this is about fashion? In our world, image is power. If you walk into the tent of Sheikh Malik looking like a servant, he will treat you like one. And he will treat my brother like a fool for bringing you." Layla snapped her fingers. 3 assistants rushed in, pushing racks of clothes. "Zaid ordered me to make you presentable," Layla said, checking her diamond watch. "We have a gala tonight at the Burj Khalifa. Arthur King will be there. The Minister of Energy will be there. And you will be there, standing next to my brother." "I thought we were going to the desert," Eliana said, confused. "The desert comes later," Layla said, pulling a deep emerald gown from the rack. "First, we must survive the jungle." She shoved the dress into Eliana's chest. "Cover your shoulders. Do not speak unless spoken to. And for God's sake, do not embarrass this family. We have enough enemies without importing new ones." As Layla turned to leave, she paused at the door. "One more thing, Eliana," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Zaid trusts you because of your father. But I remember Robert Foster differently. I remember him meeting with men he shouldn't have. If you betray my brother, I won't fire you. I will bury you in the sand myself." The door clicked shut. Eliana stood alone in the room, the heavy emerald silk in her hands, realizing that Zaid hadn't saved her from danger. He had flown her directly into the eye of the storm. The ballroom of the Burj Khalifa was floating in the clouds. Situated on the 122nd floor, the venue offered a 360-degree view of the glittering metropolis below. But the real spectacle was inside. Gold. Everywhere. Gold cutlery, gold-leafed desserts, gold threads woven into the curtains. The room was filled with the elite of the Middle East and Europe, oil tycoons, diplomats, arms dealers, and royalty. Eliana stood by a pillar near the entrance, trying to breathe. The emerald gown Layla had forced upon her fit like a second skin. It was modest, with long sleeves and a high neck, but the cut was devastatingly elegant. Her hair had been smoothed into a sleek wave, and the lapis lazuli stone rested against her throat, a rough, blue anomaly amidst the diamonds dripping from every other woman in the room. Zaid was on the other side of the room, surrounded by a circle of men in white thobes and gutras. He looked regal, commanding the space without raising his voice. Every few minutes, his eyes would flick across the room, locating Eliana, checking on her, before returning to his conversation. "Champagne?" Eliana turned. A waiter was offering a flute. She shook her head. "Water, please. No ice." "Smart choice," a voice drawled from behind her. "Keep the wits sharp. You're going to need them." Eliana stiffened. She recognized that voice. She turned to face Arthur King. The CEO of King Global looked like a movie star villain in his tuxedo. He held a whiskey glass, his smile not reaching his cold, blue eyes. Standing next to him was a short, stout man with a nervous demeanor, a man Eliana recognized from her textbooks. It was Dr. Aris Thorne, a linguist from Oxford, known for his aggressive critiques of Bedouin culture. "Ms. Foster," Arthur said, raising his glass, "you clean up well. I almost didn't recognize the girl who was pouring my sparkling water yesterday." "Mr. King?" Eliana nodded politely. "I assume you're here to surrender the contract?" Arthur laughed, a loud, booming sound that drew looks. "Surrender? Oh, my dear, we haven't even started playing. I wanted to introduce you to Dr. Thorne. He's my new lead consultant. He actually has a PhD, unlike some people." Dr. Thorne sniffed, looking down his nose at Eliana. "A pleasure. I was surprised to hear Zaid hired a hobbyist. The Al-Murra dialect is incredibly complex. I doubt a few childhood memories will suffice." "We'll see," Eliana said coolly. "I have a proposition," Arthur said, stepping closer. "Zaid is using you. He's desperate. Once this deal is done, he'll discard you like a used napkin. Come work for me. I'll pay you triple what he's offering, and you won't have to live in a compound surrounded by guards." "I'm not for sale, Arthur," Eliana said. "Everyone is for sale," Arthur hissed, his veneer of politeness slipping. "You have no idea what you're walking into. Zaid's father didn't die of a heart attack, Eliana. He was poisoned by the very tribe you're trying to negotiate with. Zaid is sending you into a slaughterhouse." Eliana felt her blood run cold. Was that true? Zaid hadn't mentioned that. Before she could respond, the music stopped. A hush fell over the room. The host, a minister of state, tapped a microphone. "Distinguished guests," the minister announced. "Tonight we are honored to have a special presentation. To celebrate the unity of our heritage, a poet from the Wadi al-Jinn has agreed to perform the Ode of the Falcon for us." A murmur of excitement went through the crowd. This was rare. The Wadi tribes almost never left their territory. A man walked onto the stage. He was dressed in rugged desert robes, his face weathered, eyes dark and piercing. He carried a wooden staff. "That's not a poet," Eliana whispered. Zaid appeared at her elbow, startling her. "What?" "That man," Eliana said urgently, grabbing Zaid's arm. "Look at his shoes. He's wearing leather sandals with the stitching on the outside, and his sash is tied on the left." "So?" Zaid frowned. "The Al-Murra tribe ties their sash on the right to signify a free man. A left-side tie is the mark of an outcast, a criminal exiled for theft." Eliana's mind raced. "And the dialect he's about to speak, if he recites the Ode of the Falcon with the wrong inflection, it's not a poem, it's a declaration of war against the host." Zaid looked at Arthur King. Arthur was smiling, watching the stage with anticipation. "It's a set-up," Zaid realized. Arthur paid this man to insult the minister in a dialect no one understands, and he's going to frame me for bringing him. The man on stage cleared his throat and began to speak. His voice was guttural, booming through the speakers. The crowd listened politely, nodding, thinking they were hearing high art. Ya Sayyid al-Ri anta kal-kalb, Eliana gasped. Stop him, Eliana said. I can't just interrupt, Zaid hissed. It would be a diplomatic incident. If he finishes that sentence, the minister will have you arrested, Eliana said. He just called the minister a dog who eats his own vomit. But he used flowery words, so no one realizes it yet. Zaid looked at Eliana. Do it. Eliana didn't hesitate. She picked up her heavy crystal water glass and hurled it. It smashed onto the marble floor just feet from the stage. The sound was like a gunshot. The poet stopped mid-sentence. The entire room gasped and turned to stare at Eliana. She walked forward, her emerald dress rustling. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought she might faint, but she channeled her father. She channeled every lecture she had ever given. Forgive me, Excellency, Eliana called out to the minister, speaking in flawless formal Arabic. But my hand slipped, purely from the shock of hearing such a terrible impostor. The minister frowned. Impostor? Eliana walked up the steps to the stage. She stood toe to toe with the man Arthur had hired. She looked him in the eye. You are not from the Wadi, she said into the microphone, her voice ringing out. She switched to the deep, rhythmic dialect of the Al-Mura. Anta laysa hur, anta kain. You are not free. You are a traitor. The man's eyes widened in fear. He hadn't expected anyone here to understand the slang of the exiles. This man, Eliana announced to the room, switching back to English, is reciting the lament of the thief, not the ode of the falcon. He has insulted this gathering by wearing the garb of an outcast in the presence of royalty. Sheikh Zaid could not bear to let such an insult stand, which is why he sent me to stop it. She gestured to Zaid. Zaid, catching the play immediately, stepped forward with a dark, furious expression directed at the actor on stage. Get this filth out of here, Zaid commanded his guards, and find out who paid him to mock our minister. The guards seized the man. As they dragged him away, the man shouted, It was King! The Englishman King paid me! Chaos erupted. Security swarmed toward Arthur King. Arthur looked around, his face pale. He had overplayed his hand. He hadn't counted on the waitress knowing the difference between a sash tied on the left or the right. Dr. Thorne, the Oxford expert, looked at Eliana with his mouth hanging open. He hadn't caught the nuance until she pointed it out. The minister walked over to Zaid and Eliana. He looked shaken but grateful. Sheikh Zaid, you have a sharp eye, and your associate has saved us from a grave embarrassment. Eliana Foster, Zaid introduced her, placing a hand on the small of her back. She is the daughter of Robert Foster. The minister's eyes lit up. The scribe? By Allah, I see the resemblance. You have his fire. As the commotion settled and Arthur King was escorted out for questioning, Zaid leaned down to Eliana's ear. You threw a glass, he whispered, sounding amused. I panicked, Eliana whispered back, her knees shaking. You were magnificent, Zaid said. The intensity in his voice made her breath hitch. But you just made a very dangerous enemy. Arthur won't forgive this. And now we have to go to the Wadi. When? Tonight, Zaid said. The minister just gave me the permit. We leave in 1 hour. And Eliana? Yes? Pack boots, real ones. Where we are going, there are no floors, only sand and vipers. The helicopter dropped them at the edge of the empty quarter, a vast ocean of shifting sand dunes that stretched into Saudi Arabia. The machine didn't land. It hovered just long enough for Zaid, Eliana, and 2 bodyguards to jump out into the swirling dust. As the chopper lifted away, silence crashed down on them. a heavy, ringing silence that felt older than time itself. Waiting for them were 4 Land Rovers, stripped of their doors and reinforced with roll cages. A group of Bedouin guides stood by the vehicles, their faces wrapped in chamois, eyes scanning the horizon. "From here, we drive," Zaid said, pulling a scarf over his face and handing one to Eliana. "The Wadi al-Jinn is a natural fortress. Electronic signals don't penetrate the canyon walls. Once we enter, we are ghosted. No GPS. No satellite phone." Eliana wrapped the cotton cloth around her head, shielding her mouth from the grit. "Arthur King knows we're coming." "He knows," Zaid confirmed, checking the magazine of a pistol before tucking it into his waistband. "But he cannot follow us here. The Wadi is sacred ground. If his mercenaries cross the perimeter without an invitation, the tribe will slaughter them. We have an invitation." "Barely." The drive was brutal. For 3 hours they bounced over jagged rocks and navigated dunes that rose like skyscrapers. The sun beat down on the metal roof of the rover, turning the interior into an oven. Eliana clung to the roll bar, her body aching, but her mind was racing. She replayed every lesson her father had taught her. Don't accept the first offer of water. Don't look the hawks in the eye. Sit with your feet tucked under you. They reached the entrance to the Wadi al-Jinn at sunset. It was a narrow fissure in a massive granite wall, barely wide enough for a single car. As they drove through, the temperature dropped 20 degrees. The canyon opened up into a hidden valley, lush with palm trees fed by an underground spring. Hundreds of black goat hair tents were scattered across the valley floor. Fires were being lit. The smell of roasting lamb and cardamom coffee filled the air. The convoy stopped. Dozens of armed men on horseback emerged from the shadows, circling the vehicles. Their rifles were not pointed at the ground. They were aimed at Zaid's chest. "Stay in the car," Zaid ordered Eliana. He stepped out, his hands raised, palms open. A massive man on a white stallion rode forward. He had a scar running down his cheek and eyes that looked like flint. This was Tahir, the war chief of the Almura. "Zaid al-Hassan!" Tahir spat the name like a curse. "You have courage to come here. Your father's blood is still wet on our knives." Eliana's breath caught. Zaid had said his father was poisoned by the tribe. Tahir was implying the tribe had killed him proudly. "I come to finish what was started," Zaid said, his voice steady. "I come to offer a new treaty. One of respect." "Respect?" Tahir laughed darkly. "You bring machines to dig up our bones. You are no different than the Englishman king. We should cut your throat and feed you to the jackals." Tahir raised his hand. The archers on the ridge drew their bows. The guards with Zaid reached for their weapons. It was going to be a massacre. Eliana threw open the door of the Land Rover. "Eliana, no!" Zaid shouted. Eliana stepped onto the sand. She didn't look at Zaid. She looked directly at Tahir's horse. She didn't bow. She didn't cower. She walked forward until she was standing directly in the path of the stallion. She spoke, not in the formal Arabic of the courts, but in the rapid, singing cadence of the women's tent, a dialect men rarely heard outsiders speak. "Does the war chief threaten guests before the coffee is poured?" she asked loudly. "Or has the Almura forgotten the law of Dakil?" The Dakil was the ancient law of sanctuary. If a guest touched the tent pole of the host, they were under the host's protection, even if they were an enemy. Tahir stared at her. The horse snorted, sensing the tension. "Who is this woman?" Tahir demanded, looking at Zaid. "Does your concubine speak for you?" "I am no man's concubine," Eliana said, her voice ringing off the canyon walls. She reached up and pulled the scarf from her neck, revealing the jagged piece of lapis lazuli. The blue stone caught the fading light. Tahir froze. The murmuring among the riders stopped instantly. "The stone of the scribe," Tahir whispered. He leaned down from his saddle, peering closely at Eliana's face. Robert. Robert Foster? He was my father, Eliana said. He told me that Tahir of the Almura was a man of honor. Was he lying? Tahir sat back in his saddle, the aggression drained from his posture, replaced by a look of profound shock. He signaled to the archers to lower their bows. The scribe saved my son's life during the fever of the long winter, Tahir said, his voice rough. We mourned him when the government took him away. We were told he was a traitor. He was a friend, Eliana said, and I am here to prove it. Tahir looked at Zaid, then back at Eliana. You have the protection of the Dakhil, daughter of the scribe. But the Sheikh of Sheikhs, the Grand Elder Malik, is not as forgiving as I am. He waits in the black tent. If you fail his test, not even your father's stone will save you. Tahir turned his horse. Follow. As they walked toward the massive central tent, Zaid moved close to Eliana. His hand brushed hers. You saved us again, he murmured. I am beginning to think I should be working for you. Don't thank me yet, Eliana whispered, her stomach in knots. Tahir is the muscle. Elder Malik is the mind. And my father warned me about Malik. He said Malik can smell a lie before it is spoken. The interior of the black tent was suffocatingly hot, smelling of incense and old wool. Elder Malik sat on a pile of cushions, a withered man who looked to be over 90 years old. He was blind in one eye, and his hands were gnarled like tree roots. Zaid and Eliana sat on the carpet before him. Behind them stood the entire tribal council. The Al-Hassan boy, Malik wheezed, his voice dry as dust, and the girl with the stolen tongue. My tongue is my own, Elder, Eliana said respectfully. We shall see, Malik said. You want the rights to the lithium. You want to tear open the belly of our mother to feed your batteries. We want to partner with you, Zaid said, to build schools, hospitals, and ensure the wealth stays here, not in London or New York. Words. Malik waved a hand. The Englishman king offered us gold. He offered us weapons to fight the government. Why should we choose you? Because you brought a girl who remembers a few old words? Malik leaned forward. If you are truly the daughter of the scribe, you will know our ways. We will play the game of three. 3 questions, 3 truths. If you lie, you die. If you fail, the Al-Hassan dies. Zaid stiffened but didn't speak. He knew he had to trust her. The first test, Malik announced. The test of the cup. A servant placed a brass pot of coffee and a small ceramic cup in front of Eliana. Pour for the guest who is not here, Malik commanded. It was a riddle. Eliana looked at the empty space next to Malik. There was no one there. If she poured coffee onto the rug, she was wasting water, a crime in the desert. If she poured it for Malik, she failed the instruction. She thought of the stories her father told her about the jinn, the spirits of the desert. The tribe believed the jinn were always present. Eliana took the pot. She poured a cup, but instead of offering it to the air or to Malik, she poured it onto the hot coals of the fire pit in the center of the tent. The liquid hissed and evaporated into steam instantly. For the spirits who guide us, Eliana said. They drink the essence, not the water. Malik nodded slowly. A murmur of approval went through the council. Correct. The spirit eats the spirit of the bean. The second test, Malik continued. The test of blood. Your father, Malik said, his voice sharpening. He was expelled because he stole the map of the hidden springs. He sold our secrets to the CIA. Admit his crime, and you may leave with your life. Eliana's heart pounded. This was the trap. If she defended him, she might look like a liar. If she admitted it, she shamed his memory but might save herself. "He did not steal the map," Eliana said clearly. "He drew it, and he didn't sell it. It was stolen from his luggage at the airport by a man working for King Global. Arthur King's father used that map to drill the illegal wells in the South Sector 10 years ago." The tent went silent. This was a dangerous accusation. "Proof," Malik demanded. "The wells in the south are dry," Eliana said, "because they were drilled in the wrong season. My father's map had a warning written in the margin. Only drill in the winter. The thief who stole it didn't read the margin because he didn't speak the dialect. Only my father knew. Only the tribe knew. The fact that the wells failed is proof that the man who drilled them was an outsider working from a stolen document." Malik stared at her with his good eye. He looked at Tahir. Tahir nodded. The logic held. "The girl speaks truth," Tahir grunted. "The southern wells were a disaster. We always wondered why they drilled in summer." Malik sighed. "Your father was a complicated man, but perhaps not a thief." "The third test," Malik said. "The test of the heart." He pointed a crooked finger at Zaid. "The Al-Hassan family has been our enemy for 50 years. His father tried to bribe us. His grandfather tried to shoot us. Why does this man sit beside you? Is he your master, your lover, or your fool?" Eliana looked at Zaid. He was watching her, his face stripped of all his billionaire arrogance. He looked vulnerable. "He is not my master," Eliana said. "I quit my job to come here. He is not my fool, for he was wise enough to know he could not speak to you alone." "Is he your lover?" Malik pressed. Eliana felt a blush rise, but she held her ground. "He is my partner, and he is the only man who has ever looked at me and seen a mind, not a servant. He is risking his life to be here because he believes in honor as much as you do. If you kill him, you kill the only chance this valley has of surviving the wolves like Arthur King." Malik sat back. He remained silent for a long time. Then he clapped his hands. "Bring the contract," Malik ordered. Zaid blinked, stunned. He pulled the document from his jacket. Malik didn't read it. He took his signet ring, dipped it in ink, and stamped the bottom of the page. "The lithium is yours, Zaid al-Hassan," Malik said. "Not because of your money, but because the daughter of the scribe has vouched for your soul. Do not make her a liar." Zaid bowed low. "I swear it on my life." "Go now," Malik said, his expression suddenly urgent. "The wind carries a bad smell. The Englishman King is not far." They left the camp within the hour. The victory felt surreal. Zaid held the signed contract against his chest as the Land Rover bounced back through the canyon. "You did it," Zaid said, shouting over the roar of the engine. He looked at Eliana with an intensity that made the air inside the truck feel charged. "Eliana, I don't know how to—" Boom! An explosion rocked the canyon floor. The lead Land Rover vanished in a ball of fire. "Ambush!" Tahir screamed from the driver's seat of their vehicle. He slammed on the brakes, swerving behind a rock formation. Bullets pinged off the armored chassis. From the ridges above, black-clad figures were rappelling down. Mercenaries. "King!" Zaid growled. "He didn't wait for us to leave. He's attacking inside the wadi." "He's crazy," Eliana cried, ducking as the windshield shattered. "The tribe will kill them all." "He has heavy machine guns," Zaid yelled. "We have to move." They scrambled out of the vehicle. The bodyguards were returning fire, but they were pinned down. The mercenaries were professional, ex-military. They were closing it in. "Get to the fissure!" Zaid grabbed Eliana's hand. They ran through the sand, bullets kicking up dust around their feet. They reached a narrow crevice in the rock wall. Zaid shoved Eliana inside. then turned back to fire his pistol at the advancing shadows. "Zaid!" Eliana screamed. A mercenary appeared on the ridge directly above them, aiming a rocket launcher. Zaid looked up. He didn't have a shot. He looked at Eliana. "Stay down!" Zaid threw his body over hers, shielding her with his own back. The rocket hit the ground 10 yards away. The shockwave slammed them against the stone. Dust and rocks rained down. Eliana's ears rang. She coughed, trying to clear the grit from her eyes. "Zaid?" He was lying on top of her, heavy and still. "Zaid!" She shoved him off. He groaned, rolling onto his back. There was blood on his forehead, but his eyes were open. I'm okay," he gasped. "Just knocked the wind out." The mercenaries were closing in. Eliana could hear their boots on the rocks. They were trapped. Then a low hum began to vibrate through the canyon floor. It grew louder, deeper, like a freight train. "The wind," Eliana whispered. She looked at the sky. The horizon had turned a bruised purple. A wall of sand, 1,000 feet high, was racing toward them. A haboob, a massive desert sandstorm. "The Samum," Eliana said. "The poison wind." The mercenaries hesitated. They looked at the approaching wall of destruction. Suddenly, from the cloud of dust, riders emerged. Not on horses, but on camels, hundreds of them. The Almara tribe had rallied. They charged through the sandstorm like spirits, their faces covered, swords and rifles raised. The mercenaries stood no chance. Between the blinding sand and the fury of the tribe defending their sacred ground, Arthur King's private army was swallowed whole. The storm hit Zaid and Eliana a second later. Zaid pulled her tight against his chest, wrapping his jacket around her head. They huddled in the darkness of the crevice, the wind screaming like a banshee, the world reduced to the beat of each other's hearts. 2 days later, the Al Hassan Palace was quiet. The storm had passed. Eliana stood on the balcony of the east wing, looking out at the calm ocean. Her bags were packed. The job was done. The contract was signed. Arthur King had been arrested by Interpol at the Dubai airport, attempting to flee the country. The testimony of the tribal elders regarding the illegal attack had sealed his fate. Eliana heard the door open. Zaid walked in. He had a bandage on his temple, but otherwise he looked immaculate in a dark navy suit. "You are packing," he said, stopping in the middle of the room. "The contract is finished," Eliana said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I assume my work is done. I should go back to New York. I have to find a new job, since I walked out on the last one." Zaid walked over to her. He took her hand. His grip was warm and firm. "You're not going back to New York," Zaid said. "Zaid, I can't stay here as a guest. I need to work." "I agree," Zaid said. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. "That is why I am offering you a new contract." Eliana took the envelope. She opened it. It wasn't a check. It was a title deed. Director of Cultural Heritage and Vice President of Operations, Wadi al-Jinn Project. The elders inserted a clause in the final contract, Zaid said, a small smile playing on his lips. "They will only allow the mining to proceed if the daughter of the scribe oversees every step of the operation. You are legally required to stay, Eliana. I'm afraid you are stuck with me." Eliana looked up at him, tears pricking her eyes. "VP of Operations?" "And," Zaid added, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a whisper, "there is another position I would like to discuss, but that one requires a different kind of negotiation." He reached out and gently touched the lapis lazuli stone at her throat. "You were the only one who answered the question, Eliana. In the hotel, in the desert, and in my life." Eliana smiled, the first true, unburdened smile she had felt in years. She dropped her suitcase. "I suppose," she whispered, leaning into him, "I should hear the terms of the offer." Zaid kissed her then, a kiss that tasted of the desert wind, of danger, and of a future that was wide open. "The terms," Zaid murmured against her lips, "are forever." Eliana Foster's journey from a silenced waitress to the most powerful voice in the desert proves that true worth isn't found in a bank account, but in the richness of one's mind and the courage of one's heart. She didn't just translate a language, she translated the humanity between two warring worlds. While the experts looked for profits, she looked for people. In the end, the billionaire Sheikh didn't save her. She saved him. And together, they built an empire, not on sand, but on trust. If you enjoyed this story of romance, danger, and redemption, please hit the like button. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories every week. What would you have done in Eliana's shoes? Let us know in the comments below.